Want to talk about setback at first, or how are we going to work this? We take suggestions, or?
It's your meeting. If you want to
Yeah, we'll take some suggestions.
The ordinance I brought to you tonight is the Argyle Township ordinance that I helped create in 2010. It became a state model zoning ordinance for wind energy along with about 6 other ordinances. Some were quite permissive, some were quite restrictive. I wrestled with the same issues you're wrestling with now, because typically what the wind developers propose to you is legislation that leaves in your hands the decision of either saying yes to turbines for the whole township or no by picking a setback number. We felt that that was a very high bar and places a lot of responsibility in your lap that you're now trying to decide, do I make these people angry or these people angry? And in my mind, that's a lot of pressure that we didn't think was fair and reasonable. The other thing that's happened is the earliest turbines in Michigan, in Mackinac City, were in the 200-foot range. When we started developing our ordinance in Argyle Township, they told us to look at the turbines in Ubley, which were 390 feet tall. So we presumed that ours would be too. The developer would not answer for us how big the turbines were going to be for their project until we got to the FAA submittals and saw they were 494 feet tall. So again, they jumped almost twice in height in just a few years, but yet the setback was still recommended to between 1,000 and 1,320 feet. Well, NextEra now has approval for 590-foot turbines around Deckerville, and I consulted with a company in Maryland that was going to build 690-foot turbines there, Pioneer Green. So my point is, picking a fixed setback that does not take into consideration the fact that the turbine heights are always changing could leave you with an ordinance that may not give you the protection you want. We felt that by picking a multiple of the turbine height instead of a fixed number, it could fix 2 things. As the turbine size increased, so would the setbacks, which would give more protection from the larger imposition on your view shed. But secondly, it would be impossible for anybody to characterize it as exclusionary zoning, because your defense in court would be 50-foot turbines would go under only a 250-foot setback. 500-foot turbines would be a 2,500-foot setback if you use 5 times the height. There's no way anybody can argue that that's exclusionary zoning, because the choice as to what size turbine you build is up to you and not the entity that's regulating that. So we found that was a very reasonable way to adjust that didn't require you to pick a number. The thing that concerned us most in Argyle Township is as long as the setbacks were measured from the structure rather than the property line, any non-participating leaseholder's property, non-leaseholder's property that was inside that setback circle, could be a 20-acre parcel, could be a 40-acre parcel, anything inside that setback perimeter, by measuring it from the house instead of the property line, you're essentially writing an ordinance that forcibly donates unleased property to the wind developer to be used as a nuisance and safety easement. We didn't think that was reasonable, and our attorney from Foster Swift advised us that the noise limits and the setback should be from the property line. Otherwise, you're essentially awarding an uncompensated nuisance and safety easement to a wind developer, and that troubled us more than anything. So I'm fully aware of the issues you're dealing with. I think a multiple turbine height set to the property line is a very legally defensible ordinance. At the same time, it protects everybody's property rights.
Okay, like we got 2 times its hub height or 1320, so if the hub height is more than 1320, they can go to the 1320, what you're saying? Because the higher the windmill, the hub height's going to be, right. Center is going to be...
Your ordinance looks to me like it's copied from Minden City, which I think was derived from Huron County. Huron County's ordinance, just yesterday, they placed a moratorium on it. They're looking at much stronger restrictions and property line setbacks there as well. We did not pick a physical limit for non-participants like a hard number. We used a strict multiple. Now, for participating landowners, I think that our ordinance picked a much smaller setback and much higher noise limits, because we figure if you signed a lease, then you're saying I'm willing to take the risk with the effects. But we didn't think that non-participants should have those impacts forced upon them. So I think we used 4 times the height to a non-participating property line, but a wind developer could reduce that with a waiver or signing them into the contract. That seemed fair.
The biggest point he's making, you're saying Well, he's saying property. And that is, you know, like he said, if somebody owns a 20-acre parcel, by you saying the dwelling, you're giving away that right of their own property to the windmill manufacturer for a nuisance or any other. If it's the property line, there's two things that happen. One, my 10-year-old is going to be 20 years old in 10 years. Wants to build a house halfway up to 20 acres. Well, I understand he can build the house there, but now even though it's closer to the windmill, I'm not affected by the variance, but he has to live within that zone. If you go off the property line, then he'd still be in a safe zone. You're denying the safety factor by saying off the dwelling.
Do you have any input?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I think it's important to look at the different perspectives in this situation. Argyle Township, correct me if I'm wrong, does not have any wind turbines utility scale.
Like Denmark Township.
Right, exactly. Those are townships that have ordinances in place to prevent utility scale wind projects.
Or protect private property, depends on
We
the
have
perspective.
We have many landowners in the township signed up to participate in the project, which is the reason I'm here and talking to you. Because it's worth having a conversation because you have a large percentage of your taxpayers signed up for a project. It's also important to look at the master plan of the area, which I have the Salem County master plan here, and it's to discourage new residential construction in ag areas. If you want to protect every lot for future development, that's one thing, but I don't think that's the intention of this area.
Is it the nuisance stigma from the turbine that prevents new residential development?
I didn't interrupt you, sir.
Oh, I thought you'd stop. Forgive me.
On top of that, I want to point out that there are industry standards for turbine heights at this point. I've never heard of a 590-foot turbine, and we review different models every day. On top of that, we're not going to put a 50-foot turbine in. It's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 400, 450 feet, most likely. I don't know which model it's going to be. I can't tell you that now. But I don't think we can say what would happen in court, but you can't speculate that that's defensible.
I can say in my experience since 2009, I don't know of one case of litigation against a community that adopted strong ordinances, and that's in Schoolcraft County. It's taking place right now. Their setback was 3,900 feet. I know every community that's considered wind zoning, the developers always suggested that it's exclusionary and will likely lead to litigation. And in 7 years, I only know of one case. I mentioned Denmark Township because I think that was an Invenergy project as well. And the people adopted very strong zoning there, and to my knowledge, Invenergy never brought suit.
Well, like I said, we're just trying to find a happy medium because there's a lot of farmers that's already signed up for this. And we are kind of a rural, it ain't densely populated enough. You know what I mean? But there is people that's,
We do know what happens when these things go to the ballot and referendum. I've been involved in a lot of them, and the people who prefer to have strong regulation prevail at the ballot box, usually in the order of 65 to 35% when given the vote. I can show you half a dozen elections where that's the ratio.
So does that mean that, and I don't mean like say, is that if 70% of the people that own 10% of the land should dictate what the 90% of the people that own land are dictated by, and are the 30%? I mean, what is right and what's stepping on? I mean, I admit there's more people. The farms have gotten larger. Farms own 1 or 2 mile sections or whatever of land or whatever, and we have a tremendous investment in that. And I mean, I know, like say, one person, one vote, but on the other hand is that what our investment in what we have in our land and stuff. I says, like say, to decide to, like say, a small town could say we don't want no windmills, so we don't have to see them, and even if you didn't have no residential property outside of, they could say, well, the people in town would vote it down. Well, that's not right either. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's no different than saying what right you have to put up a 450-foot windmill and have it, so I've got to put up with the flicker, the noise, and everything else in my house. I'm not your
Right.
neighbor,
No,
but, you know, it's
But
the same
but same
thing.
hand, you could put a house up and 20 to 30 feet off the property line to the side, a 2-3-story house, totally block the view or sun sets or anything, and that you would probably consider that to be fine. I mean, which would probably, and you could be mowing
Yeah, 'cause
lawns.
it's not sticking 500 feet out of the ground either. That's a big difference, Chuck. You can't compare that.
You
It's
got
not like
one,
you're building a
one
house.
vote at your house? I run AFC homes, I have 13 people to 20 people in AFC homes. Each one of these are registered voters, they live in the outdoors. So each one of these guys have a vote. They have
I'm
a
saying
say.
that's, I didn't say they just shouldn't have a vote, but I says,
It don't matter, you live in the county, you're a taxpayer in this township, you pay your homestead act in this township, you should have a vote. I don't think a guy who owns 5,000 acres and lives in Pinnabog, that don't even come down here, and he has 7,000 acres rented out to the windmill company, he should have one vote. He's already got the money. They've already rented his property. So his one vote, because he owns 7,000 acres, outdoes everybody else in the company.
I don't know where you're talking about in Argyle Township.
You heard up around a little closer, Argyle and Moore's hooked to each other.
Like I said, this is a real farming community, you know. I don't see where we should just kick them out, you know, I mean, make it impossible for the farmers to make get some earnings off them, or you're just gonna go build them someplace else.
It's both. I mean, I live on Wheeler Road, and Lowe's own the property around me, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7, let's call them a residential homes in that area that live, you know, that aren't farmers. They moved out in the country for the peace, quiet, you know. I don't mind the manure on the field or the tractor going by the house or whatever, but you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
it's a mixed community. To say it's just a farming community.
Well,
you know it isn't.
that's what
And
I
if the farmer wants the windmill, there's no problem with him having a windmill. To say you can put your windmill up, you're not gonna do it on a 40-acre parcel. Okay? That's all there is to it. You're gonna have to put it on your main parcel where you've got the room where it can go on there. And the windmill companies can plot these things that when they put the windmills up, they can look and say, okay, I have a residence house over there, the sun comes up in the east here, and we're not gonna put the windmill here, we'll put it north or south so he doesn't get the reflection of the flicker or that. And you get the distance so he doesn't have to put up with the sound.
Yeah, I can't say that. My mom and my brother, they got 4 or 5 around there, and they're probably at least 1,300 feet. And I never noticed the flicker or the noise, or
When I
that's just
worked in
my
Ugly, I
experience.
had people that lived up on 19 to the east of 19. That's the first thing they said. A couple of them said they lost their wireless because of the tower. Other ones were saying, yeah, I've got to put blinds up on my windows. They got great big picture windows. I got to close off my picture window now because come evening time, the windmill goes around and I got a constant flash coming in my house. I got a brother-in-law that lives over east of Verona Road. I've gone over there, he told me, come over there and just listen on a quiet day when there's a wind out and you can hear it. It's a sound that wasn't there before.
Well, yeah, it could be
And-
sound. We
Well,
just
I mean,
all
we could have a
depends on,
discussion in here and it's nice and quiet, but, it's different then.
some days you can hear your neighbor talking half miles away.
Well, some days I can hear my neighbor talking a mile
Noise
away, but
travels
bad.
better some days than others.
My mom and dad going a mile away, guess what? They get no flicker, because guess what? It's on the north side of their house. They'll never see a flicker in the rest of their lifetime.
Yeah, it all depends where the sun is.
Correct.
Where the sun comes up and sets.
Yeah,
or whatever.
well, that's part of saying, okay, it's the responsibility of the windmill companies to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
You're correct that when we're citing these, we do minimize the shadow flicker and the noise. That's part of responsible citing. So I just wanted to come up with, that's done, that's.
And you try to eliminate that as best as
Right.
you can, right?
the one they just had in the Huron paper there, they just was talking about last week, but there was one that 3 or 4 people had flicker, and that they were being scheduled to be shut down over at a certain period of time when, on certain days, when that sun hits the right spot or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I don't know what these guys are, but it sounded like the one in Huron County, that was just something that they worked out. They said, didn't take it for a long period of time, you know, if they shut them down for 20 minutes or so, a few days of the week or whatever, for a few weeks, that when that sun's in the right spot, I mean.
Yeah, you gotta remember, here in town it's kind of experimental. They first start putting them up, and I think they've learned a lot since then too. Where, you know, put them and.
But the setback distances haven't changed, because you can only increase them about so far until the developer says, I can't build them. And so it's not like one developer can come in and offer a half mile, because they can't build them.
No.
So the setbacks have remained the same. So that's why I say there's only 2 kinds of wind energy ordinances. One that donates the neighbor's property to the wind developer, or one that forces them to negotiate consent and compensation from all the affected neighbors.
Yeah. Again, I just think there's a real, I don't know. There is some people.
Like a baseline that you look at for flicker, or do you just follow the ordinance the best you can, or is there an industry standard maybe I should ask, or?
So 30 hours maximum per year, which comes out to be a couple minutes, you know, a few days, you know, you get what I'm saying. But 30 hours max per year is basically, you know, what our studies look like. We try to make sure we're under that. And in most cases, you know, it's not a problem at all.
And would that generally be 3 to 5 minutes a day for 80 or 90 days out of the year? Or
yeah.
How does it really work?
Yeah, I mean, it's spread out. It depends. You know, we're in Michigan, so you only have sun, clear sun so many days a year, unfortunately for us. But, you know, and the weather spans out. It's a few minutes here, a few minutes there. You know, at certain times of the year, you may have it more regularly a certain number of days. And that's when we can work with people. And if it's bothering you, and even if we're, you know, below the maximum that's in the ordinance, you know, there's options to work with you, like Carl said.
Have you ever had to go back on a tower because of noise or anything that you know of?
Not that I know of. We have 51 wind farms, so there could be some place that where it's happened, but not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty involved with the Gratiot County project. You know, haven't heard anything there.
Well, with you guys 3-4 minutes of the day, but my living room window has sun coming through it at least 8 hours a day when there is sun. I don't know if everybody else's window, I've got some small windows, I don't know.
The question would arise, the sun moves, so that's, the question would arise, okay, what happens, all right, I'm upset now, I set up my video camera, here's 10 minutes today when the sun came up in the east, I set it up, I'm looking at my house, and you can see the windmill. I let my video camera run for an hour and a half. Well, today was an hour and a half. What happens when we go over the 30? Well, we'll try and do something to it, or are you going to say, okay, if you go over the 30, you know, that's like doing over, that's like, oh, you decided to do 70 in a 55. Oops, now you're going to have to pay a fine. There's got to be a stop, or doing the best we can, or we'll talk to you, because I did some research on
within the proposed ordinance. We do have a resolution
Committee, you're the committee here, and plus them.
for not only shadow flicker, but obviously for anything pertaining to windows, if residents have a complaint for it.
that the township is gonna,
Yes, there's going to pick some off of this board and another board and some, you know, and everything we've got is for them.
How do you guys measure your decibels? Is there a meter on that windmill at all times, so when it hits over 55, it shuts down and slows up?
No, they're cited to prevent going over the maximum decibel level.
Well, how does it determine maximum decibel level? That's what, we have a lot of fog. It's twice a year we have fog bad. And these windmills are returning fog. Go stand up in Argyle, up at one of them up there. I've actually done it. In dense fog, I can hear a hammer hit 3 miles away when they're building the new barn over here. You can hear the guys talking, and I said, you hear it 3 miles away. You hear all that noise? Fog intensifies it, and it is terrible. I mean, you know, as living out in the country, you hear your neighbor 2 miles away pounding sheet steel on his barn. You hear it day in and day out, because everybody's building around here. So you get in the fog in the morning.
Yeah, but how often does that happen?
Well, we have
I mean,
two
we
lots.
also have noise from cars, and we can't, we're just not gonna outlaw cars.
But go stand up there and 1,400 feet, go stand at 1,400 feet, go up there and do it. I'd like to see you guys go do this, because I'll tell you what, you see guys lip 4 foot away, his lips moving, you can't hear him.
We know that the turbines have caused noise problems across the state because of litigation in Spain, where people abandon their home, where there's ongoing litigation from the residents against Heritage and Garden Peninsula. Consumers Energy had to settle with residents in Mason County. There's persistent litigation over noise complaints, and all the developers made the similar statement. Industry standard 1320, 45 or 55 decibels. So the track record is that despite the promises that these things will not be problematic, there is a lot of litigation from the noise, to the point that Heritage introduced a bill to exempt them from post-construction litigation because it's become so pervasive. So there are problems.
So it says there's not much problem with noise, there's people just looking for money. Like here in Cowley, they sell with the people, they give the people more money because of the noise, you know what I mean?
Well, here
So there might be there's a lot of people, you know.
There's 3 people that's got a gag order, they got some money that can't even talk about it for 20 years too.
Huron County is a good example because they are looking at adopting a lower noise limit after 8 years of experience. So it is a good example. Their experience is we need to tighten this up. Your ordinance is based upon theirs, and they currently have a moratorium and are looking at property line noise and setbacks and physical setbacks.
I mean,
It isn't only that, and I said it, I've gotten to the age, I don't want, I want to retire, sell my home, go live in a nice warm sunny, I don't want -2 degrees that we got coming. Okay? To resell my house, once I have a windmill 1,300 feet off it, how many people are gonna wanna buy into something like that? Or if they do,
We addressed this last time though, didn't we, that property values, there's been no,
no, what was discussed last time was, oh, here, property values went down in 2007. That was because of the economy. What has been done is there has been research where windmills have been put in by houses. Illinois is one state where they did it. I just had a video on it that I was watching. They did it. Some people, and I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go get my house appraised. Okay? Today my house is worth this. If the economy goes up 4% every year, 4% every year, 10 years from now, I got a windmill 1,300 foot off my house, and guess what? The appraisal of my house is, I can't sell it because nobody wants to buy it because there's a windmill there and they know about the noise and everything else. Where am I going to recoup my losses?
I've looked
I
up,
don't know that for a fact though.
Because it's already happened.
I've looked, I did a lot of reading, I've never seen, I tried to look that up. Go ahead.
There's a map that's currently online that you can look at of Argyle Township, and they consider 47 homes within that 32 wind tower park up there. 9.4% of the homes in that area are for sale and been for sale for the last 2 years and not sold. I know our economy's bad, but this is out in...
What's the percentage outside of that within Oliver Township?
That I do not know. I could only go off of
Because
what
we
they
need to
put.
compare in order
Correct.
to.
But, you know,
But these are normal homes that are out in...
but the county is bad, down Argyle Road here, no 2 or 3 homes. There's a lot of homes for sale right now because there's no work around here and everybody's moving back to the city or, you know,
Well, it always changes in your case.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, how about the homes around the big dairy farmers, where they
At
were?
least more land.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to point out, there's been a pretty inclusive study that was done by Lawrence Berkeley Lab. They covered, let me see here, what is it, 24 individual wind projects in 9 states, covering 14 counties within the United States. Their conclusion was that there's no evidence found that home prices surrounding wind facilities are consistently, measurably, and significantly affected either by the view of wind facilities or the distance of those homes to the facilities.
Who did the study?
Lawrence Berkeley Lab.
Ben Holmes. Ben Holmes, the author of that study, and there's an audio transcript of an interview with him where he says, wind developers like to use my study to suggest that there are no impacts on property values, and that's not what we would specifically say. However, if the wind developer is not willing to offer a property value guarantee to support their claim, they don't have a leg to stand on. So I would ask Invenergy if they're offering you a property value guarantee for all the neighboring parcels. If their study is valid, there would certainly be no risk to them.
I know, I tell you what, I set up my front porch, and you was commenting the other day, it's like, listen to a refrigerator. I'll be damned, my refrigerator makes too much noise, I'll go out and plug the stuff if I'm watching a movie. You can sit on my front porch, ride my pedal bike across the yard, and listen to a refrigerator next to my ear going, I mean, come on, we live out in the country for a reason. If I want to live, I've been around the world twice now, once on a Harley, and I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of shit out there, and I'll tell you what, when I want to go sit down to relax, I sure, and I don't want a refrigerator sitting on my head.
Well, I got a question. If the windmills are so nice and peaceful and quiet, how come there's a gag order in the leases, land lease? How come there's a gag order that's automatically built into the lease?
I think the gag order is protect the, like was brought up, how much they get paid. She said there's a gag order prevent her from telling how much the property owner is getting for this windmill or something, right? I never.
Well, I've read the samples of some gag orders that are built into the leases. They are nothing but to protect the windmill companies. Is to keep the landowner quiet, because you're taking our money, you're not going to speak out, you're not going to sue us, you can't even tell your neighbor about your migraine headaches that you got. So you got the money, shut up.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
It's in there.
I don't know.
I read samples, I read them.
I probably have an Invenergy lease at home, I can probably get a copy for you.
How much land you got? Maybe approach you to rent your land yet? Seems like there's nobody under 300 acres that approach you and rent their land yet.
Well, you
That's a
can,
funny-
you can.
Yeah.
okay, like I said, we'll take our discussion. I don't know what to say. So you guys are saying either you let windmills in or you don't. But like I said, you got a lot of
Well,
farmers.
it isn't don't, it's just, why is it so hard, instead of a dwelling, to say, okay, off the property line? There's facts out there where these have, you know, and somebody's gonna say, well, my propane tank blew up, ain't got nothing to do with it. These things have sheared apart, okay? In that sheared, they spread stuff. That's one of the reasons for, it's a safety reason for having it so far off. If you have it off the property line, you're that much safer.
I've been to this whole state numerous of times, and I'll tell you what, I can't figure out why, when I go north, up I-75 to Grayling and all that up north, you see mountains up on top, and from 50 miles away, West Branch stuff, you see all these mountains? How come we don't have a single damn windmill sitting up on top of all these mountains where we wind 24 hours a day? Why are we sitting in the lowest point of Sanilac County trying to put up a higher windmill to catch air when the Powder Rose of Traverse City, come up north? Why are you talking in rural areas? Because it's all state game land, you can't rent it for what?
It's actually worse than you know. The wind resource in Michigan is so poor. Every turbine that's built in Michigan, if it were built in Iowa, would produce roughly twice the amount of electricity as being located in here. The installed cost for wind in Iowa is reported at $1,350 a kilowatt. Michigan's DTE's latest project is reported at about $2,150 a kilowatt, so the installed costs are much higher, yet our capacity factor is far lower. The Michigan wind mandate has resulted in power purchase agreement prices an average of $76 a megawatt hour for wholesale value electricity that's worth only $30. And OEA and NREL report that you can buy wind contracts out of Iowa in the mid-20s. So every turbine that goes in here is going to cost you roughly twice the amount per unit of electricity delivered than if it were constructed in Iowa. So it's a really poor deal for Michigan ratepayers. That's why our co-ops are all in agreement that they want the ability to buy renewable energy from out of state because it's much cheaper.
He must be DTE
Well,
guy.
how come all these windmills are being built here?
Because
Because they're being
PA 295
subsidized by the federal government.
No, it's the state forced them to be constructed here in PA 295, but the in-state mandate was declared to be unconstitutional by Judge Posner in the Seventh Circuit, which is why the governor's office assures me, along with the state legislature, that the replacement for PA 295 will no longer have an in-state mandate for renewable energy. I'm going to guess that these folks are either going to try and flip their project to Detroit Edison, who's being zoned out of Meade Township, or they're going to have an out-of-state PPA, maybe as far away as the Tennessee Valley Authority, because our local utilities have largely fulfilled their renewable energy mandates under PA 295. The most attractive thing about this area for wind developers is the proximity of the thumb loop. They're looking for cheap access to transmission.
We've already put it in for them.
That's right, $500 million.
Right down.
Question?
There are many things said there that are not accurate.
That's not
from
true.
our-
No, I've been doing this, I'm an electrician. I know.
There, one big reason that wind energy is attractive right now is because Michigan is retiring many of the old coal plants, and wind energy is one of the cheapest new generation sources. That's a large reason.
Why do we retire them? Because we put a nuclear plant down Monroe and shut down Harbor Beach. We don't need Harbor Beach, because we've got Monroe, and we're putting a subsidiary line down through their interline.
See, Invenergy knows better than that. They know, because they operate a tremendous fleet of gas-fired generators, that you cannot replace a dispatchable coal plant with intermittent, non-dispatchable wind. MISO's independent market monitor, Potomac Economics, reports that wind's capacity value, not factor, in MISO is only 2.7% of nameplate capacity. So it is not an effective replacement for dispatchable generators. And she should not be suggesting that it is, because it's demonstrably false. The choice is not between wind or coal. The choice is between coal or nuclear or wind plus gas, period. It's been a long time, but we've spent enough money on windmills in the last 7 years that we could have replaced half of our coal plants with even Invenergy gas plants. We could have already reduced CO2 by 25% and fine particulates and mercury by half with Invenergy's very fine and very capable combined cycle gas plants.
Well, if the wind is so inefficient, like, what was those numbers you were saying it cost to produce X amount?
Yeah, our average power purchase agreement price, capacity weighted according to MPSC, is $76 a megawatt hour for electricity that has a wholesale value of just under $30 in our grid.
And how much would it be if there was a nuclear plant to fulfill the needs of that?
There's nothing cheaper than a fully depreciated nuclear plant that's already been amortized, because their fuel costs are incredibly low. If you wanted to replace the nuclear plant in Newport, for instance, with wind turbines, you would have to build 2 Vestas V100 turbines in every square mile in a semicircle from Toledo to Detroit and almost to Ann Arbor, and still build 1,000 megawatts of gas capacity, because like Irene Dimitri, the vice president of renewables at Detroit Edison, said in 2011, we can see what the output is of our wind fleet, including the ones in Gratiot County in July and August. It's one big goose egg. So when demand is highest and the price of electricity is at the highest, wind is not there, which is why Invenergy also maintains a fleet of gas-fired plants that can take advantage of that peak pricing situation. And they're a great gas plant operator. I like Invenergy's gas fleet.
Do you have a comment you want?
I was going to finish my statement with, wind energy is not meant to be a direct replacement for coal. It's a mix of power generation. Invenergy has solar plants, wind, geothermal plants. We are a mix of things, and wind energy is a big piece of that. But it's not a replacement. All sources work together, even coal's in the mix still, and it will continue to be.
So what's wrong with the solar saying of this township instead of wind? You mentioned solar. Like
Well, the solar resource in Michigan is, not as good as the wind resource, and it would take a lot more area for a solar plant.
What about the gas resource though? You take a look at the sitting gas fields that Michigan has, between what's down by St. Clair or even what's over by
North Branch.
Quantico. Yeah, just
North
those
Branch
2 areas alone.
Produces
That
all
would
the
burn
power.
off. So to put up one gas plant, say over by Quantico, you've eliminated all the windmills and you've got a constant energy source.
Right.
In fact, if you saw the DVD of my presentation that some folks have circulated, the 40 or 50 turbines they intend to build in this area can be replaced by one semi-trailer mounted combustion turbine that fits inside an average dairy barn. That's how little electricity those 40 or 50 turbines produce. You either turn an entire township into a 50-story tall power plant, or you build a tiny gas generator that you can shove inside a barn. Invenergy's engineers know that's true. I would not be saying it in front of them if I couldn't defend it.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe.
We've allowed a few people to talk a lot, so is there
Sorry.
anybody else that have other things they'd like to mention now?
Don't we run out of gas at some point?
That's right.
We should always have wind, come on, we're right off the lakes.
The wind puts one wheel on bigger turbines.
Yeah, we're gonna run out of gas, so why not at least experiment with wind?
Not you, your kids, or your other kids like.
Experiment, we've already got enough windmills to experiment. We need the technology to handle what,
Work on it now before we run out of gas.
well, you've already got enough, there's already enough up to say, okay, this isn't working. As AKA here in county is already saying, well, what we did to begin with isn't working, so we're doing this. The idea to have something better, I agree. I'd like to see a battery made that every homeowner could have that's about the size of a car. I park it in my garage and I can tap the energy between solar and wind and have it in my house so I don't have to
Well,
pay
what do
anybody.
you think about that, Ed? We worked with the plant, we made the safety cover for the battery for all these electric
Yeah.
cars. Guess what? A 1974 Bonneville with a 400 car, you take 2 spark plug wires off it, run on 6 cylinders. The emissions for that car running for 30 years on 2 cylinders, not even firing, putting CO2 in the air and stuff, is less toxic to the United States and the world than it is to build one car battery for an eco-economy car. All the batteries are built by Sony in the Philippines where they have no restrictions. There's not a battery
Same way
made-
to electric cars, it's electric, but electric is produced by coal burning plants or, you know what I mean?
But
So
we don't
you
produce-
still got the same
Yeah,
emissions.
but we don't produce a battery and make a battery in the United States. They're all built in the Philippines by Sony and stuff. The United States, we're not allowed regulations and the hazardous waste they have to make one battery.
Plus the
It's
government
tremendous.
gives them a $7,500 tax break on your car, guess
Yep.
who comes out of whose pockets?
You're right. Yep. Been there, done that. We've seen this, we've studied it.
Yeah. Now, I have one other thing I was gonna bring up. Talk about setback off of property lines down. I got Lamont's here, and they got each wind turbine tower shall be set back from the nearest non-participating property line a distance of no less than 1.5 times its total height of the tower or turbine, but in no case less than 500 feet. That's better. I'm trying to compromise here.
Right.
And 1320 is just way out there to me. You know, at least 500 is going to protect. You know what I mean? Your house is going to be. You know what I mean? If you're. You know, what I'm trying to say.
It's
is-
actually less if your house is close to the property line. That makes it less than what the 1,300 is in the original.
Well, the,
1.5 times.
you said you didn't want it by your
That's
property.
750. That's 25 because of the.
So here, at least it's going to be 500 feet away from your property line.
Yeah, well, then you've told them you can go 500 feet from a property line. What about my dwelling?
Well,
You know,
You want it off your property line or your dwelling? Make up your It mind.
no, it's the distance from. You see, and by reducing the distance to say, okay, we can go 1,300 feet off your dwelling or 500 feet off your property line.
Like I said, that thing with the gas tank might blow up. Okay, guess what? Go on the internet and look down at DeKalb, Illinois. They had one blow up 3 years ago. 1,575 foot of debris out in the middle of a field. We're talking 1320. Well, guess what? I guess 200 foot of that blade coming through my house don't mean yet. I mean, because it's already been, accidents happen, it happens. We know that. It might be a fluke accident, but it already happened. It's already been documented. Go on the internet, DeKalb, Illinois. You can see it on video. I've got videos of it. If you want to see it, stop the house. I got a
It's
VCR
like what he
shot.
says, it's giving up.
It's gonna happen.
If you do
Two of them blowing
off the
up.
dwelling, you're giving up my property.
They had one blow
Take out
up there by
my-
Lake France up in Huron County, up by Catesville.
Yep, and that one blow up just right north of,
And based on those
It'll
setbacks,
blow up
was
for
anybody
the,
hurt?
well, the blade came off because they weren't torqued properly.
Was anybody
Either
hurt
way,
in
the
any of
blades
those
don't come off.
instances?
That's right.
Or were the
That was-
setbacks great enough to prevent someone from becoming hurt?
well, right north of Parisville, they got two of them up there with missing blades, I mean.
Those blades, the debris from the blades up there by Lyprance were more than 1,320 feet.
Right.
And whether anybody got hurt or not, that
Yeah,
just
that's
means
not-
there was some-
it's
somebody,
just a- it's
was
just a
somebody
matter
out
of
out on
time.
the farm or outside at the time it happened. And, you know,
We do have published data from a couple turbine manufacturers on what an appropriate safety perimeter is. GE's is a little smaller, but Vestas and Nordex both publish documents that I can furnish to you that tell their employees that they should stay 500 meters away from the turbine in the event of a brake failure or a overspeed or a fire. They tell you to run upwind if you're an employee 500 meters, which is 1,640 feet. Now, in my mind, it would be unconscionable for somebody's private property who did not sign a lease to be inside that radius. When you site turbines 12 or 1,300 feet, and if they happen to use Vestas V100s, for instance, or some Nordex units, their employees would have to run 300 or 400 feet past your house to get to their required safety perimeter, past your kids' swing set, past the sandbox, and hopefully they knock on your door on the way by. And so there are published documents that will give you an idea of what an appropriate setback is. But I think with a multiple of turbine height to the property line, it forces the developer to decide, am I going to negotiate with everybody that's going to bear the impacts, or am I going to checkerboard this out? I will say the trend line over time, in Gratiot counties where Rich Vanderveen tried to pioneer some of this, we see them reaching out to more and more people farther and farther from the turbines, because the social impact, the loss of amenity with turbines is becoming clearer and clearer. RES America is now saying that they've signed everybody in within 2,100 feet of the turbine into their project. Well, as long as you write zoning that continues to give the milk away for free, they're never going to offer to buy the cow. And so if communities continue to hold firm, particularly in Michigan's somewhat better wind district than the thumb, though it's still anemic compared to Iowa, as long as you guys, if you begin to hold firm and demand stronger setbacks, they will have to begin to offer greater compensation, which is only fair. Why should you take somebody's future development rights away and diminish the amenity of their home if you didn't first get the consent and didn't give to them the right to negotiate with Invenergy as a full equal landowner partner? When they know the setback can be set in the house, you diminish those neighbors'
But are we
negotiating
diminishing
ability.
the right of the current property owner by making this too strict?
The right to swing my fist ends where another fellow's nose begins. So the only way I know that you can balance these two things is to give both landowners an equal bargaining chip. But as long as you're citing the turbines based on an interior feature of a neighboring parcel, which we do with no other element of land use policy, we don't measure setbacks to an interior feature of a neighboring parcel for anything except wind turbines. As long as you do that, you are giving one neighbor preferential treatment at the expense of the neighbor. That's not reasonable.
When we first started this whole thing, there was like 4 of us in this room, and we put a motion in 1,800 feet. And that was for safety. I was a safety coordinator in plants for years. I still do industrial stamping. I've never had an injury in my life, never lost a finger, nothing. But 1,000 people per shift working in one of my plants down in Detroit I worked for. And I'll tell you what, I'm proud of that. It does happen, and like I said, and I'm down there all the time maintaining it, and I'm proud of it. Safety does come first in my aspect. I don't give a shit about myself, but I'll tell you what, for people who work for me, and my kids, my grandkids, I will protect the safety. And I still say 1,800 feet is still a goal in my books. And like I said, if it don't work out for you, fine. I got a 40-acre parcel, you're never going to put one on anyways. I give a shit care less. But the thing is, the guy next to me, who's got 4 miles square section, owns it all, he wants them, fine. Put him 1,800 foot away from my property. He's got 4 miles square with a big barn on it. Put one down there every 300 feet from each other. I don't care.
Before they came, you won't see none of them, I don't think, in this.
Oh, why not? He owns 6,000 acres.
If
He
we
put 20 on that
actually
6,000 acres.
had these 4 mile square sections by one owner, I think it would be easy to do that.
You better check Lamont Town, or Moore Township.
Who in Argyle Township?
Yeah.
Jake Swimmer and two other farmers have already leased all their land to him for the next 7 years. Already in writing.
And we do.
I got a question. Go ahead.
We do regulate restrictive zoning for many activities in township, like mobile homes, like adult-oriented businesses, like medical marijuana dispensaries. That's a common use of zoning. I bet your ordinance has a height restriction for residences of maybe 30 or 35 feet. Why? Because 50 feet is unsafe? No, you can build 5-story houses. It's because your community made a decision when you adopted your ordinance to say, we don't want to see anything really taller than this. You regulate uses like that all the time. Wind is not unique. If an adult bookstore operator was saying, I demand to be put right in the middle of town next to the gas station because it's the only place I can make money, would you say, well, okay? Or would you say, well, I'm sorry, your business has some known stigma effects. We're going to regulate them in a way, even if it causes you some financial harm. The oath that we all swear or swore when I was an elected official was to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the township, not to make sure that every developer's business plan succeeds. That's the difficult and thankless part of the job that's in front of you. We wrestled with this for nearly 3 years in Riga, which is why we finally settled on a consent and compensation ordinance like the one I set in front of you. It re-empowers everybody and it doesn't donate anybody's private property, which is the only fair thing to do.
I think we're sitting in a building right now, it used to be called the bar. And
That's the parking lot.
well, once the bar burnt, they couldn't rebuild the bar because the ordinance says you couldn't build within 700 feet of the church.
Yeah. But
That was
we're for or against, and Todd knows there was 20 people that actually bothered to return the letters. You know, now all of a sudden everybody,
And most of them were with us.
But wouldn't it be
Here,
better,
here on the side of safety.
I want to say something about that. In this modern day of technology, of social media, newspapers, radio, all this stuff, I tell you what, this has drawn a lot more attention just in the last couple of weeks than it did the entire 2 years.
Yeah,
And that was a very bad decision on somebody's part up there at that table, because that could have been advertised a lot better.
Every meeting was.
Because I was one of those people that did fill that out.
well, we figured wasn't a better way than to put it in your tax bill, to know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's fine, but when all these other meetings were going on, there was nothing else. And you
it's
can't
posted.
use this bulletin board out here as an excuse to say that gets to everybody.
Put it on the door over there at the Argyle store.
Well,
Get more.
nowadays, I don't know, it ain't like it was years ago. Hell,
I know it's
your
not.
neighbor
Yeah,
died.
out here.
Half a quarter mile away, you wouldn't know about
You
it.
could make a Facebook.
Nobody listens to the radio or
My
the,
exact question was a week ago, when's the next meeting? And somebody said it was the 4th of next month. And I
Yeah.
walked out of the parking lot and at 7 o'clock I had a phone call, where the hell are you? I said, what? Well, it's been changed to 11th. I said, yeah, 11th of next month.
that was the last minute.
Yeah, well, half the people were outside already and I said,
That's not how a meeting should run.
I mean, a week later, when I asked deliberately, you said you'd post it a week ahead of time, and I'm here again tonight.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
Go back to the ordinance, what you guys think, what else questions do you have?
I guess all we really talked about was the setback, burial depth, I don't know, we got that set at 8 feet.
That sounds great, yep. I'll agree with that one.
Hey, I got a question regarding the burial. I was in a meeting here when we had a representative down from Delaware, and he flat out told everybody, what a nightmare.
Yeah, but
They cut
they're at 4
corners, they
feet.
buried this stuff, this wire's not, that farm equipment can get into, and it's not even lined up where it was supposed to be laid out.
Well, that's why I went 8 and hopefully end up at 6. Yeah.
And I think we got in our ordinance that we will hire an outside contractor to monitor that.
Yes,
while
we
it
go
is
hire an outside
at the
monitor.
windows company's expense.
Yep.
Where do you get the applications at?
Okay, what else was discussed at the last meeting we're missing?
Local, the word local kind of disturbed me. When I asked her last year, there'd be a local facility. I need more definition of local. It's gonna be in Sanilac County or, local could be another state as far as they're concerned. I wanna know, if you're gonna put it up here, I want a housing with 17 guys and distribution work center, maintenance garage in Sanilac County. Not local it is Connecticut or Ohio or Indiana. Well, you guys consider local, it could be California. Lots of the United States is local, I guess, to you guys. I mean, I want something in writing that says if you're gonna employ local people and stuff.
Okay, let her have her say. What do you?
It would not be practical to have our units installed outside of the state. It needs to be near the project area so we can work on the turbines.
So the one in Traverse City is good enough for us then?
I'm trying to finish my statement. We usually have an O&M building for each project. There's one in Gratiot County, we would have one in Sanilac County. I don't know which township it would be in because I don't know what our project looks like yet.
I said, just the word local is a big word.
How close to the conservation areas can the windmills be put?
I don't know. She said they would check. I don't know if they're going to build or not, but she said there's DNR permits and stuff. I know on the other side in Minden, they're half a mile, quarter mile away from the state area. They're pretty close.
I understand they're 2 miles from Lake Huron.
It's actually 3 miles, isn't it? It's 3 miles.
3 miles?
The state's got, because the migratory birds follow the shoreline, so bird kill, I guess, and stuff, that it's got to be 3 miles from the...
So when do these studies get effective? Because I'll tell you what, last year I heard of 1,000 swans in our backyard. They're not migratory, I guess? The geese? And you guys all know we're the biggest geese hunters around here. I mean, Sanilac County, they come from miles. Where's the study for all these birds here?
The study's going on currently. We do it a year of
On the middle branch, I had a measure study.
Chuck?
Like say the guy up here and stuff, I says, like say in that 1,320 feet, I mean, like say you're a professed expert on it, I says, in the 1,320 feet, you know, that they have a setback, what would you consider, like say, to be a person's chance of being injured? And I like say any injury is bad, but would you agree that your chances of injury was probably 100 or 1,000 times more likely driving from wherever you did up here than your chances if you lived within 1,320 feet of being hurt or killed?
Well, let's say it's less dangerous than me being a crab fisherman. 2 wrongs still don't make a right.
I'm just saying put proportionality for the snowmobile.
But it is proportional to the state of your township now versus what it will be after they're built. That's the right measurement. So that's the criteria. I would offer one thought, and then I will stop bothering you. The people will have a say on this matter because the ordinance has not yet been adopted by the trustees. The people will have the right to place it on the ballot for referendum. Talking with the people in the community, it only takes 40 or 50 people to put it on the ballot. And if they reject your work, you'll have to start all over. So the question that you'll have to ask yourselves is, do I want to be on the side of having promoted an ordinance that will change the nature of the township and find out that most of the people prefer to leave the township as it is? Or do I want to promote an ordinance that leaves the township as it is, and then if the people overturn that, they will have at least in a majority fashion told you, yes, we want this changed. We've seen maybe a dozen or so of these referendum elections take place. 2 in Huron County, Paris and Lake, both promoted strong ordinances by more than 60%. If you look at the Proposal 3 election returns and the 25 by 25, we'll see that Huron County, Mason County, Gratiot County, all the places with turbines voted against a statewide increase mandate by higher margins than the rest of the state. The idea of whether or not a majority wants it or doesn't want it will not remain theoretical very long. When the trustees approve it and it goes into the paper, if it's restrictive, I would suspect that Invenergy's leaseholders will put it on the ballot, and if it's permissive, the citizens that are talking to me will put it on the ballot. So that's what will happen.
Now you talked about Paris. I didn't think Paris, well, their offset wasn't that bad, was it?
Well, next era told them that
I thought they were one of the most restrictive ones around here.
They are restrictive in Paris. Next era modeled it and said the noise setback would be about 6 miles. That's how it worked out. That's too restrictive. I would agree. If Invenergy protested that, I would side with them. That's too strong.
You better take them IICC.
I'd like to get a copy of theirs, right? It seems like. No, like I said, we ain't taking sides, and nobody, we're just trying to, get a happy medium here,
It's impossible.
I know, it's impossible. You're gonna piss somebody off no matter what.
Which is why I say make it the developer's fault. Let them decide whether they lease enough to make it go or not. Why should that be your fault? It's their project, not yours.
Yep. Well, I agree
Were
with
our
you.
ancestors having these same arguments 100 years ago when electricity first came
I'm sorry. Speak up.
I wonder if our ancestors 100 years ago were having these same arguments when electricity first comes through.
I'll tell you what, my ancestors had a goddamn musket welder who took care of it.
Back in 1776, they just had a whole thing about that, and it was nasty. That's what this stuff is for. It's supposed to be so people can come meet civilly,
Yep.
discuss it, say, hey, what is wrong with this idea? To say, okay, if you want to be less, if you can't go off my property line and you want to use that area, give me the right to say, okay, pay me for it, now you can use it. Okay, I've agreed to it. If I don't agree to it, then you're gonna have to move the windmill farther away.
I don't think.
But what you're saying, you don't want windmills, but you're gonna pay me for it, it's all right.
No, I'm saying if you want to use my property, no, well, hey, I want to go deer hunting.
I'm trying to start nothing here, I'm just saying.
I want to go deer hunting, and I no longer need to talk to you about having your
No,
permission.
it should be your choice.
Is that the same thing? People rent property to go deer hunting.
That would be the same argument of the property owners. that
I
own that.
do own property in this township. I am not opposed to the wind turbines. I don't find them personally offensive. What I do find offensive is the huge cattle or dairy farms with the liquid manure. Now that is offensive to me. I wouldn't want to live near there, but I don't smell a windmill. I have been near many windmills in many areas, and I have not had a problem with them. I've gone horseback riding around windmills. There's been cattle in the fields with windmills. I don't see a problem with it. But I feel like I couldn't have said anything because there's so many people with negative opinions. And have you been near them? Have you been out with them?
Yep.
Have you traveled? If that's the case, fine, but those of the people that aren't opposed to it shouldn't feel that we can't say anything.
Yeah, you made a good point there. Like you said, I'd rather have one of those in a farm, but dairy farm.
But the ordinance for the state says right to farm act, we have no say over it. So that's a state mandated law, not a township. They didn't get permission from the township to do this stuff. There's no way to fight that. That's mandated by the state right to farm act.
You could add to your zoning, however, that any farm that hosts a wind turbine would also have to adopt 100% certified organic farming practices. Then you get double the environmental return.
There we go.
Right? I mean, if we're doing it to save the planet.
He's not in
Can't use any more fertilizer, Chuck.
Trying to save the environment.
That's why
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay,
That's
go
why I
ahead.
handed that to you.
Yeah, I read it, yeah.
Is it protected the participating and the non-participating? And, when there's a problem, you have to go with the property lines. I mean, there's a lot of other townships that I've looked into, and that's the whole way they're adopting it.
Yeah, I see like Lamont here, 500 feet, and to me, I don't know, that'd be 1,000 feet. What is 40 acres usually across?
1320 by 1320.
So you just about, I mean,
Well, the state of Michigan has a setback at 1.5 miles to be safe from any residents.
That's,
Now, where did you get this from? I never found it. I've looked and looked and looked and looked.
They did put this report in their report on renewable energy that was released in 2012.
From who?
The state of Michigan.
State of Michigan.
The Michigan Energy
Said
Office.
these guys couldn't find it, so we.
The Michigan
pulled it
Energy
up.
Office, the Public Service Commission, and the Governor's Office generated that report. If you look at the last paragraph, they didn't generate this. They found it credible enough to include in their final report on renewable energy because they're recognizing their problems with local siting. And the last paragraph, I think, suggests that paper says in hilly terrain, setbacks in the order of 1.25 miles should be recommended. And that document.
That means they consider it flatland then, right?
Where is this took? I think New Zealand, Netherlands, you know.
I don't see where this is state sponsored.
Well, you have to go to the state's report that put that in their document. That's where I got it from. If you go to michigan.gov/energy and then click on their final report on renewable energy, you can read that report and you will see they reference both this report and a study by Dave Hessler, who was, in my mind, a wind-friendly acoustician who told the state of Minnesota it would be advisable to keep noise limits below 40 decibels. And both of those documents are referenced by the state of Michigan, are in their final report on renewable energy. I can send you the parent report from which I got this document. The state of Michigan has come a long ways from 1,000 feet and 55 dBA, and they're now looking at much stronger restrictions, or much stronger guidelines. They do not have control over local siting issues, which is why you're wrestling with this today.
And the windmill company, for their windmills, they've already got a stronger setback, like you had mentioned, 1,600 feet, and then we're coming in and making it lower, so we're just saying, okay, we'll just,
Was it Spencer, Spicer? Moore Township hired them to come in, and their recommendation to Moore Township was 1,600 feet. They hired a windmill company to come in and do the recommendations to get the ordinances done, and in Moore Township, they recommended 1,600 feet.
Spicer's not a window company.
They're our organization plan.
They're an engineering firm that
Engineering
sometimes
firm.
gives zoning advice, but they're also, in my opinion, very friendly to wind development, which is why wind
And
developers
And
recommend
they're
Spicer.
windmill friendly, and I'll admit they are. And in Moore Township, we hired them, and they come in, they said 1,600 feet. It was a big discussion. I mean, like I said, that was right from Spicer, was eco-friendly to the windmill. They hired him, paid some big money for him to come up. He's actually, I don't know why you guys don't have, but I mean, they got all proposed land that's already signed in Moore Township with every house dotted where they can actually put them. So we know where they're gonna actually go, not to say 30. They've actually engineered where they say, with this ordinance, boom, you can put 28 of them. With this ordinance, you can put 42 of them. But it shows where they're gonna be at and whose property, basically, is all it's gonna show you.
Wouldn't one of the biggest questions be right there, what is, you said it at the last meeting, that we can have certain distances, but at one point we're gonna become so restricted that then the windmill company would try and sue us.
Well, they wouldn't sue it, they
Well-
get changed in court or whatever. Right?
Yeah, they take it to court, and you got, that there should be a happy medium point where
Yeah.
discussing with her, and I don't know if he's with you or whatever, but discussing with her and say, okay, you've got to hear what these people have to say. This is the legal ramifications of it. Are we overstepping our bounds to say 1,300 feet off the property line? Would that be considered too much to say it there?
You got a question?
Yeah, you keep quoting a lot of townships in their setback requirement. Give me what the few other townships around what theirs are.
Yeah, I got about 6 copies here of different township plans.
Now, do you keep quoting the smallest one, or do you take an average?
The smallest is 1320.
Then why,
Yeah, but a lot of them changed. When they started in Huron County, it was like 1,000 or 800 or something like that, and they changed it to 1320 because they were having problems.
And we still got problems with having a memoriam up there, that's why, because they want to change it further in, but they can't, because they have a memoriam up there. I mean, that's the whole point of the memoriam, until they get this set up to come back further. I mean, kind of common sense, don't go to 1320, go to 16 or 1800.
You asked a good question, though. What would the test the court would apply to your ordinance be? And the council can advise it far better than me. I'm not an attorney, but I do watch Law and Order. The test that the court applies is, does this ordinance have a rational relationship to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and is it arbitrary and capricious? That is essentially the test that's applied to these ordinances. And it turns out you don't have to be right on the science. You just had to have some finding of fact on which to base your decision. What you're wrestling with is a development project that is essentially someone trying to shove a size 12 foot into a size 8 shoe. If we didn't have 1 mile sections across the state of Michigan, you could get 3 miles setback from turbines, this issue would go away. But the truth is, they're trying to put very, very large structures into a community that has a house on every mile. That's not primarily the township's problem, that's the business model they've chosen for themselves, which is why the courts and the zoning enabling act places with you guys the sacred charge of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of everybody in the community.
And that's why we had the people from Minden Township was here. They told us their mistakes. You know, that's what we're trying to learn is off of these other, you know.
I don't think 1,800 feet's gonna have these guys taking us to court for 1,800 feet, that's for sure.
They did in Denmark Township, and they enacted very strong regulations down there, and that was an Invenergy project.
And in Denmark Township, we chose not to develop further, so it comes down to if you're looking to host one project or not. Right.
Yeah,
but you didn't litigate.
Couldn't do it?
Nope, we didn't.
Right.
No.
Well, we spent that.